Yeah, okay. We'll get to that as well here. But first, nice enough to join us, as I told you, national sports broadcasting legend. He's done a lot of 49er games in recent years. It's a pleasure to welcome Chris Myers to the show. How are you today, Chris?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Hope you guys are fired up for football. It's good to have the NFL back.
Absolutely. Is it true, Chris? Did you actually do a talk show on the radio when you were 16 years old?
That is true.
Wow.
I used to call in and disguise my voice as a young teenager, and they ended up hiring me. I would, you're supposed to only call a radio show like once
Yeah.
a night or what.
Yeah.
So I would be Chris from Miami, and then I disguise my voice and call back as Duke from North Miami, so I could get on, and I'd agree with my earlier call. And eventually that got me hired while I was in high school. So I got a Saturday radio show that I would do as kind of a college football scoreboard show while I was still in high school and helped work my way through college. That's how it all kind of unraveled.
That's incredible.
I had no clue. So, Whitey, I had an opportunity to work with Chris at Fox.
Sure.
I was there for a long time, and Chris is ultra professional. But one of the things I loved about Chris is we had, and I'm peeling back the curtain a little bit to kind of spin off what you're doing. When I was on NFL on Sunday, we had play-by-play or color or sideline reporter call into us. So if you were early game, during the early window, we would have the late game play-by-plays call in and vice versa. And Chris was one of the people who actually always picked up his phone and or called in, right? And so I used to always, like, one of my things where as we were going down the list, and I'm not calling anybody out, I always said, that's a legendary figure. He is someone that is dependable.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. It was already in his teaching, his education. You were already around radio for a long time, Chris. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's in my roots. And actually, Mike Tirico and I actually kind of started ESPN radio at one point, and then Fox Sports Radio was also, I kind of started that with I think Andrew Siciliano was on there. There's a few different people. So it's always throughout the TV portion. I've always felt it was important because you have a lot of time. And I really learned at a young age how to do interviews and how to call games and interact with people. It is, by the way, I have a book out that came out last year called That Deserves a Wow. And I talk about, Bill Murray, wrote the foreword for it because we big sports fan, but it talks about some big moments that I've covered through ESPN and Fox, but it does talk a little bit about my humble beginnings in radio, which I really appreciated because it helped open the door to later television and some of the other things.
That's tremendous. Thanks for sharing that. What do you think of the 49ers chances here? I know you've done a lot of 49er games in recent years, and a lot of fans are not sure what to expect this year. They drafted a lot of young guys that got to have an impact on the defensive side of it. They've got a number of injuries. They only won 6 games last year. How reasonable is it from your standpoint to expect the 49ers to get anywhere close to what they were before last year?
Well, to have that, that championship knocking on the door Super Bowl standard, I'm not sure about that, but I do know every year, there is a team that finished last in the division the year before that comes back, and there's a number of factors and gets into the playoffs or wins the division or challenges. And that last place schedule, I was going over that when I knew we were going to be on, and I think it's very workable. I mean, other than the Buccaneers and the 49ers match up well against them when they've played, and teams in the division, it's a very favorable schedule. And look, I know the defense will have, you might have as many as half the guys will be new starters, but they drafted, I think the top 5 picks were all defense. And I like the return of Robert Saleh. He was always miscast with the Jets. It was a bad move for him and for them. He's where he belongs. And I think Kyle Shanahan's more comfortable. So there'll be some growing pains in that area, but he'll get the most out of the defense that he can. And you still have some key guys there to lead that defense. But I like the offense as long as they're healthy. And McCaffrey's healthy, and I know right now the receiver position is beat up. You got to Brandon Ayuk has to just give them more. I mean, and be healthy. I mean, Kittle put up incredible numbers last year again from the tight end position. I'm glad they brought back Juszczyk. He's quietly important to the you get Trent Williams if he's blocking. So and Purdy got the contract. I think he can only get better as he gets more and more experienced. So the receiver position, Pearsall has an upside. They need to beef that up a little bit, or defenses will fold and crunch on McCaffrey in the running game. But they always run the ball well with Kyle Shanahan. So I'm not just saying this. I think the division, I wouldn't say, I think they can make the playoffs, and I think the Rams have to worry about the health of Matthew Stafford. Otherwise, they're probably going to be the favorite in the division. And then the Seahawks, the quarterback position with Sam Darnold, and Kyler Murray has Arizona, so they'll be pesky as division opponents. But I think it's a Ram 49er division again, despite what we went through. When I say we, meaning injuries for the 49ers last year. And if they're healthier out of the box, right now the receiver position is, and there's a few others. But I think you could expect at least a playoff contender and a turnaround from last year for the most part.
Did you hear that, Jay? Chris Myers with us. Yeah. You talk about how professional he is. He says he prepared for this interview. We're not used to talking to people, Chris, who prepare for the interviews.
Well, the great thing about Chris, again, he's legendary, legendary status. I guarantee if I asked him a NASCAR question, he'd probably know it now, racing car, right off the head. Chris, you talked about
IndyCar, by the way. I did the Indianapolis 500, which is a lot of fun. It's the title's already clinched with Alex Palou from Spain and his third straight. He'll get the trophy in a couple of weeks in Nashville, which will be a special IndyCar moment. But we'll stay on football for a moment. Right?
See what I mean, Chris? You talked about the division being kind of a Niner and a Ram-led division here. Expanded a little bit more. Because around here, we're talking about, what could be the druthers of the 49er season. I mean, albeit we're not predicting the Super Bowl, just in a perfect world, break out your crystal ball. How far do you think this team could move forward? And I know I'm asking you, something that's extra early.
Yeah, and they could get right, and things can happen over the last few weeks with players in the preseason and injuries, and to other teams too in the division. But I look at the schedule, having gone through, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but I just think that offense with Purdy, they were high ranked last year, even with all the injuries and the problems at running back, and so that's why I think they can contend. When I look at the other, I think the other players in the division, the other coaches, it's still Seattle, they're stepping forward. I think they're a well-coached, good defensive team. Gannon in Arizona with Kyler Murray, people around the league have said, look, he has a lot of talent. But you can't trust him in big situations. And I know he can be a superstar 1 minute and then be kind of out of the picture in the next moment. I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. and him would be a lot more productive. I don't know how much they'll click in the future. I don't see those teams better than the 49ers, again, healthy, or the Rams if Stafford's he's got a lower in his back problem that has kind of kept him out. And look, a couple of years left. I mean, the Rams considered with his contract maneuver before this, trading him and maybe trying to bring in Aaron Rodgers. So, they realize that as great as Stafford has been, that he's on the backside of his career, whereas Brock Purdy has put up good numbers and is on the upside of his career. So, double-digit wins, I think absolutely. Super Bowl, probably not for the 49ers, but the NFC is really wide open. I mean, talk about the Eagles trying to repeat. If you look at the big picture, I think the North with the Lions and the Vikings, obviously they're an improved, even Green Bay, that's top to bottom, another strong division like the West. But you just never know if you get on a roll. And I think the 49ers, you have to get used to that high standard not being quite there for a Super Bowl team, as you said. But they certainly have the players and enough of the experienced players who have been there before, and they're not so old that they're going to be out of the picture.
That's, of course, Chris Myers, NFL on Fox. And Chris, I wanted to ask you about your time with Kyle Shanahan. I know that's part of the game prep. Kyle Shanahan is a fascinating figure around here. He came in and he's very influential when it comes to the directions of offenses in the NFL, and took the team from they were the dregs of the league, and then they were on the cusp of winning the Super Bowl, but he hasn't won the Super Bowl yet. So of course there are some fans getting a little impatient. My question, and maybe there's nothing here, but he seems pretty unique as football coaches go. Is there anything that stands out to you about your pregame discussions with him, maybe that you see as a little different from the way other coaches handle these things?
Yeah, well, no, it's a great. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've said before on other shows, and you, as you said earlier, I called a lot of 49er games early when he first took over the team, and really when they weren't that good, and slowly watched him build what he built, and you could see when he was an offensive coordinator in Atlanta and other stops that he had something, especially when we sat with him in meetings. We call them the production meetings, where
Sure.
the broadcast crew, right? There's no cameras or recordings, and it's some things are off the record, some things are on, but they communicate to us so that we and our directors have an idea of the best way to bring the broadcast to fans. And some coaches are very guarded; they don't trust, but over time, if they feel like they can tell you things and you haven't burned them or their team, then they tell you more. And Kyle Shanahan was one of those who was in and covered, even though I was on the other sideline in the Kansas City Super Bowl covering that game for Fox. We did spend time at practice. We spent time with him, and he's one of the best. And I'm not just saying this because we're out of the Bay Area or whatever, but he's one of the most honest, straightforward. He'll, for example, he told us, and I won't use the player's name because violate the trust. This was a few years back, but he said, "Hey, if you see this guy in the game, don't expect him to catch a pass because he's afraid to go over the middle." Okay, so just don't waste don't waste a shot on you put your camera on him. It's like, I mean, he was really that helpful, and our analyst, and it could have been Daryl Johnston at the time or Mark Schlereth, I forget who it was exactly, but they appreciate those kinds of things. It makes us all a little more aware to help the audience. But I mean, a lot of coaches will tell you that, and our trust, just like he'll tell you some really good things about players. Hey, if this guy gets in the game, you watch, we may do this with a blitz or something because he's so fast, he can get around whoever they put out there. And so it makes us look smarter and allows us to do our job a lot better. And I like that he's just straightforward and honest about it. And he'll admit when he's made mistakes or why he did something that didn't turn out the way it did, and takes responsibility when he doesn't have to with us. But that's you can tell with his dad, Mike Shanahan, that's the kind of coach he is and the influence he's had from other coaches or people in the league.
Joined by Chris Myers of NFL on Fox. Chris
Myers is killing it.
Yeah,
man.
Come on, man. Legend in the game, brother. Chris, you have the Bucks Steelers, I believe, tomorrow too. Talking about quarterbacks throughout the league, just opposites.
He does the Bucks. He's a Bucks guy, during the preseason. He does Bucks.
Yeah,
games.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
With Rondé Barber.
With our Barber, I was going to say, with Hall of Famer, right? What Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to say they're going in the opposite directions, but it sure feels like that. Just your overall intake on the game that you got tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I mean, Aaron's a lot older, but and his numbers actually weren't that bad. I got to call a Jet game of his last year when he and Devontae Adams hooked up, but overall, again, the wear and tear on Rodgers, not the guy he once was. He's certainly better than what the Steelers have had at quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger left, and they think he's going to put him over the top. I don't think their defense is, yes, T.J. Watt's outstanding, but they haven't had that Steeler defense that's a difference maker like they had when Ben was there. So and Rodgers, it's just been a little awkward since he left Green Bay, whereas Baker Mayfield has revitalized a career. I mean, a former number 1 overall pick. Remember, he did get Cleveland to the playoffs. And then he admitted that he had to grow a little and understand his role. And once he got kicked off the top of the mountain and was kind of looking for work in Carolina, and the Rams gave him a shot. It was a unique marriage with the Bucs looking for a replacement after Tom Brady. And they said, hey, you come to us and we'll work with you. And he worked really hard to not just the physical parts of the quarterback role, but his own, what he learned on. He's still not all that old, depending upon age compared to Rodgers and playing that quarterback position. So I think he's really in a happy place, and he's taken the Bucs. They've played well against teams like the Eagles and the Lions. They've won playoff games. In fact, the Buccaneers, this is their 50th anniversary. We all remember the early struggling years, and of course that Super Bowl team that had the great defense when they beat the Raiders. But the last 5 years, they've been one of the top teams in the NFL. It's been their best 5-year stretch in their history, and that includes the Brady Super Bowl win. But they're right up there in terms of wins with Kansas City, the 49ers, some of those top-tier teams that the Bucs don't get mentioned because they just, they haven't been as much on national television. Like if Brady helped with that. So they're the real deal. And their defense slipped a little, and that's Todd Bowles' specialty. So if they get that right, and they've got some players that they added Hassan Reddick, they're trying to correct that, then I think they'll go a little further in the playoffs. And everybody thinks they play in a weak division. That's why they get in the playoffs. But they've advanced in the playoffs. They just haven't made it to the Super Bowl. Not yet with Baker, but I wouldn't be shocked if that happens somewhere before his playing career wraps up.
Great, Chris Myers. Chris, we appreciate your time. Before we let you go, you've already taken us behind the scenes on your early days in broadcasting, and talking with Kyle Shanahan. I have to ask you, as a dog lover, can
You're going to ask him the question I was going to ask him.
Really?
Westminster, baby.
Yeah. Could you take us behind the scenes of the broadcasting and the production for the Westminster Dog Show? Is there a story or maybe a couple that kind of sum up what it's been like for you to broadcast for that?
Well, I'm a dog lover. Always had a dog growing up, and my wife family does a lot of animal dog rescue for other people. But we've never really shown dogs in that. I mean, they can be mutts, mixtures, whatever. As long as you love them, they have a home. But the dog show is a lot, and I say this respectfully because I enjoy the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, and this year's the 150th live from Madison Square Garden. But it really is a lot like the movie Best in Show behind the scenes. I mean, they really did hit on it. I think even people there, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's us." I'm like, okay. But they're so focused. They're like some coaches who live in it. They're so focused on their dogs and their role that even the analysts I work with sometimes, they'll say something like, "Oh, this particular dog, the Whippet, finished, I'll say, hey, Whippet, good." And they'll go, "No, this one really wasn't all that good. This one was, third on the, there'll be a contending dog, and his name is this dog is one of the, it just got into the finals, and his name is Cuervo." And I'll say, "Yeah, so he's got a shot." And they'll go, "No, not really, but at least he's one of the contenders." So I'm entertained. I don't know if they are, but they're focused on doing their job, and I try to have a little fun with my job. But I really do love it. I mean, and the animals are the dogs are the stars. They're the stars of the show, and just putting a camera on them is usually entertaining enough.
Chris, you've had the opportunity, football, basketball, racing, so many different things, host shows, be a part of shows. When they called you, when Fox obtained the rights, did you put your name in the hat? Did the agent get that? Did the head of Fox give you a call? How did that come about?
Well, that's funny because I just said, "Did we get that?" I said, "We got the dogs." I said, "That'd be fun," because I saw the movie Best in Show, and I said, "I can't." I said, "Like that at all?" I don't know. I said, "But that'd be fun to do. I love being around dogs." And they're like, "All right, you got it. Good luck." And so. And I think it's been 7 or 8 years, and we've really enjoyed doing it. They're big, as I said, 150th coming up, and you watch the bidding rights for that will probably go through the roof. I don't know who's gonna. It could be on Netflix after this year. I don't know. So we'll see.
That's tremendous. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on the TV.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for the fun conversation. Enjoy the football season. I'll see you guys later. Take care.
Thank you. Yes. Wow, Jay. Thank you for lining up Chris Myers. That went a number of ways, and they were all a lot of fun. Thank you, Jay.